Now, I do want to go back and talk about the censorship stuff again and actually hit it from a different angle. Because let's just keep it very much a stack. A lot of the stuff that's been happening real quick has been annoying and very out of pocket. Going as far as to take away certain games off of Steam, going as far as to now having the UK just straight up banning everything and essentially having people to be forced to do, verification in the weirdest way possible to just get easier access to your information. You basically have like tons of these different organizations, groups, activists basically trying to control everything and everyone, and basically limiting options for everyone and every little thing that possibly can stand out and do something. Basically, you're not getting anything that you ever really wanted, and censorship is just very much here and it's present in all shapes and forms, and we're basically just living the life of Shimonetta now. Essentially, that's what it is. And you might be thinking, oh, well, we're in America, that shouldn't bother me when it comes to the UK. Have you not noticed half the time when something happens in Europe, the rest of the world usually kind of follows? Let's not have that to happen this time. Let's not have that to happen when it comes down to it. Because obviously, things of adult nature, things of mature, like telling of stories and fiction and even real media, that stuff needs to exist. There is no reason at all for why other adults should be policing other adults in terms of what they watch, what they do, and all that sort of stuff. As long as it's not anything truly illegal, then at the end of the day, why are you caring this dang hard over any of it? Like I said before, you can sit here and say you don't like things like a lolly or like a furry or like whatever. You can say you don't like those things all day. But the minute you try to start taking stuff away from people, that's when we have an issue. That's why, again, a lot of uglification of different characters and just how, certain characters can't be viewed as sexy and whatever. Why stuff like that has gone away because of people and companies and just things like this as a whole. And it begs the question, why? What could be a potential reason as to why a lot of this has happened? Why is this honestly being the case? And I do have one, and it's one reason I do feel like people have in these activist group has taken way too dang far, and you're literally not supposed to, and it's due to religious reasons. Like, if I'm gonna be absolutely honest, I believe I've seen people say that Collector Shout is also like a religious group, or at least they have like religious people that's in it, and then just kind of want to put those ideals of what they believe actually out into the world, and that's kind of what's been happening. But ultimately, it does go back to that root, and it is by far one of the more easiest things for people to just straight up resent. Let's just be real. I'm it's kind of hard for me to talk about this because it's kind of hard to say it in a way where it's not like, oh, religion isn't bad, but because I don't want to say like, oh, all religion is bad or anything like that. But they have people within it that definitely take it to the absolute extreme. And I think that's where the gigantic problem is. Why you see a lot of people on the internet, very popular people just in general, be like, oh, I don't necessarily mess with it because of bad experiences as a child or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. You know why they experienced that had a bad experience and all that sort of stuff? It's because it was forced upon them. It was because they literally was probably in a position where their parents, their relative, or whoever maybe showed them something or did something that forced them upon them in some shape or form, and now they have a resentment towards it. I believe that's probably the reason why you see people like, I think Asmongold don't really care for religion that much. I know Jaden Animation don't care for it that much either. So, like, there's a reason why tons of different people kind of just dip off of, like, believing in anything as a whole, because it was forced upon them, and that's just how it was, right? Granted, as a parent, of course, if you do believe in something, you want to straight them into the right path of what you think is right, and all that sort of stuff, but, ultimately, that doesn't necessarily mean things are going to stay there, right? Let's just keep it very much set. People have very much their own choices of what they want to do and things of sort like that. Now, ultimately, if I had kids in the future, if my kids were to want to dip off of it, that would hurt me a lot. That would hurt me tremendously. But at the end of the day, if that's their decision, if that's where they, feel like they need to go, then that's what's going to end up just being the case, right? As much as I don't want that to be the case for them, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you just want everybody to kind of stick together where you think it will be fine at. But ultimately, that's not how things just go. And again, and with really how the world is now, because so many times people have been forcing their ideals on other people, that's causing what people, to resent people like Christians and whatever, people all the time when it comes down to it. That's why you get certain cases where people will lose their jobs because of their faith and stuff like that too, right? It's the reason why, honestly, part of the reason why I don't really bring it up that much on this channel. Very rarely will you ever see me talk about things of this sort of manner, right? And honestly, that's the reason why I try to avoid talking about, things like loose, that Vatican lolly and all that sort of stuff, because I didn't feel comfortable jumping into that, conversation and topic and, all that sort of stuff. It just feels weird. It just genuinely feels weird, and it just doesn't be an area of what I want to deal with. But getting back to the topic though, the reason why a lot of censorship is happening, and part of the reason why of, how everybody's going crazy over it, is definitely because you have a lot of religious nutcases that are within like these governmental positions. Heck, if I'm gonna be honest, the government has always been with, or at least used, religion in their practices really ever since the beginning of time, if I'm gonna be honest, right? Heck, America exists off of it too. Like, why do you think the, Pledge of Allegiance has one nation under God in it? Granted, God could be many different things, and especially to the government, it could be a whole different name than what we're thinking of. But when it comes down to it though, why do you think they have that for a reason? Why do you think the court system have you pledge your truth and nothing but the truth and swear on the Bible and all this other stuff? It's because they have that within there. That's what it's been built upon for years. And pretty much, I wouldn't be surprised if every country in some shape or form has their own form of religion, and maybe formed up that religion in some shape and form to kind of just have that to be the government notion, to be part of the government in some shape and form. Whether they believe in it or not, that's neither here nor there. It's just the fact that it's there, and it's always going to be there. And so now, in literally everything that has come to pass, and everything before and everything that will go through, religion in some shape or form, when it comes to the government, it again will always exist and be there, and whether it's for good or for bad. And will have people come through in these sort of positions that will try to make changes based off of things like that, or people will take that into account and try to change things up in some shape and form, when literally, at least in the Christianity life, you're not supposed to do any of that, right? Or at least you're not supposed to force your way in ideas onto other people. That's just never what it has been, and I believe it's actually within the Bible itself. And honestly, I'm about to just go ahead and pop off with a few bit of like scripts and verses real quick. So I guess this is Bible study for the first time in one of these videos, which I am not called. Dear goodness, do I not want to be called to preach at all. But still, nonetheless, this is just what someone of the Bible has said. Like, if you literally take a look in like 2 Corinthians 9 and 7, you can clearly see that, at least from the scripture, from what Google is saying, it says each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Basically, do it as if it was like free will, just basically you have a choice in the matter. And there's not just that, there's plenty of other verses within the Bible as well to kind of, I guess, like go over the same sort of thing, but maybe in different contexts, but still go over the same sort of thing. Like Matthew 28:19-20 basically is kind of like the same thing as well. Make disciples of all nations, essentially, have people kind of just like ready to obey Jesus and the Lord and things like that, but with not forcing them. But to make it even more clearer though, so like in 1 Peter 3:15, you have one verse in particular that just like, basically like, be ready to explain your faith to other people, but do it with a sense of gentleness and respect, but not trying to straight up, I guess like persuade them with force, right? And that's again the whole thing. It's like you can't see, the Bible literally tells you, hey, just like it's okay to tell people that God exists and all that sort of stuff if that's what you want to do, and it's okay to kind of just be happy within your faith and all that sort of stuff too. But ultimately, you cannot or you should not force it, right? That's literally the whole dang point, because once you start forcing stuff, people are going to sit here and resent it. As someone that follows the faith myself and follows God and Christ in the Holy Spirit and things like that as well, I very much understand. If I were to start slapping down a whole bunch of videos just talking about the Bible or talking about how great the Lord is, which he is great, but ultimately I know a lot of y'all gonna dip off. I know a lot of y'all would be pretty mad about that. And I understand that too, right? For sure. I wouldn't want to force anybody to listen to something that they don't want to listen to, much less listen to someone that's being like a mad hypocrite of who they once were. And that's what a lot of other people kind of are when it comes down to just being a part of religion or the faith or anything like that. Is essentially they end up trying to act like, oh yeah, I'm this omega Christian person and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately at the end of the day, they lie. They're liars. They're sometimes not great people. Even some of the best spoken people that claims to be a Christian or whatever, or even just anybody religion whatsoever, because it might not just be Christian. It could be somebody from like Catholic, could be Islamic, could be somebody from like that does maybe some Hindu stuff. It could be anyone, and ultimately they could say they're the best at that, but then there's something shady in the background that they might have done or was a part of that ultimately puts a sour taste in my mouth, and then proves them to be wrong, being an absolute hypocrite, right? That is just how it is, and that just makes people resent being a part of a faith even further, right? Because like I said before, and as I continue to say, you should have a choice when these companies come through and these activists come through and they start making these sort of choices being limited. It just makes people want to resent them. And when you have religious nutcases to come through, be overly religious and do overly the line of what they're supposed to do, then that's just gonna make people get pushed one further away from any sort of elements of faith and religion, but at the very same time it makes them extremely more resentful to literally anyone and anything that's getting in their way of what they want to enjoy. Again, if you're somebody that is very much wanting to bring people into the fold of a religion of some kind, they have to do so freely. You cannot be forcing your whole ideals on the entire world and think everything is going to be fine, when in reality, as we have clearly seen, I don't like it, I'm against what's happening right now. Chibi Reviews don't like it, he's against what's happening right now. Plenty of people in the UK don't like it and is against what's happening right now. Tons of people across the world don't like it and is against what's happening right now. And what? Because of some weird activists that, think women can't be fine or look good or anything like that, or, has to force some religious means because that's just how they are and so they should force it on everybody else. That's not how that works. And for the people that might have a bad religious experience, because I probably don't know when I'll get the chance to say this, but I'm going to be absolutely real, and maybe I'm overstepping my boundaries by saying this, but at the end of the day, when you had that bad experience, and whoever that person was that gave you that bad experience of it, I'm not gonna lie, they were overstepping their boundaries of what they were doing. They should not have been forcing you that hard of what you really should be getting into and stuff like that, because again, it always comes down to a choice. Because I'm gonna be real, having faith in whatever you decide to believe in is not a bad thing. Following into that faith is also not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when people get involved and they start trying to force that upon you every single day of your life. And then ultimately, that's just what makes you end up making a lot of resentful and rebellious choices. That's what it is, right? Because I promise you, if half the content creators that was in the positions where they was being forced into being a part of religion and stuff like this, if they were given a choice, some of them probably would have changed their minds on how they feel about it now. Some of them probably wouldn't necessarily be in the same exact position of how they feel about it than what they are now. And that's just ultimately how it is. And yeah, that's kind of what we really have. A lot of these credit card companies coming through, maybe not exactly for the same exact reason, but there is part of that reason that is very much there because we have seen this time and time again. And I believe I will end this whole video off with a story about how I tried to force somebody into religion back in middle school and almost ruined a friendship that was growing since elementary school and has went on beyond college, honestly. So in middle school, there was somebody that I knew that was Muslim. He was my best friend since elementary school. We had known each other for so many years. And honestly, I haven't talked to him in a while, but still, I would like to imagine that we were still pretty decent friends. At the end of it, though, back in middle school, I questioned why was he Muslim. I couldn't understand because at the same time, as I clearly have said, I follow Christianity and stuff like that, and I'm just like, why are you Muslim? Why, I don't understand that. And I had this whole mentality of just like, oh, you do know this ain't it, right? Because obviously, I don't want to see him go to a bad, horrible, burning place, and so that's where my mindset was. I didn't want to see that, so ultimately, I was like, yo, what makes you think Islam is absolutely right? And then he clapped back at me, was like, what makes you think Christianity is right? And so we kind of clapped back at each other, and I was really ready to challenge him for it because I didn't necessarily know like the whole thing about it, right? Granted, again, I was a young kid, I didn't really understand all this at the time, and so I told my mom about this, who was actually somebody that's called by God himself. And essentially, I brought this whole situation up to her, and you know what she said? You know what she told me? Someone that has always told me the right thing when it comes to, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit and things like that. Essentially, what she ended up telling me is that I shouldn't have been trying to force my friend to be, something that he isn't. That is it. That is the whole thing, right? Someone that is very much within the faith, has always been within the faith. My mother has told me that very exact same thing every time. She has told me that. And when it comes down to it, though, she literally was just like, we can tell people about the word, but we shouldn't try to force it on people. And from that day forward, that has always stuck with me. And so the next day I talked to him, we talked about it, and essentially he respects that decision, and we kind of respect our own religions from that point forward, and we still was the best of friends for all that time. And that's just how it was. Why ruin a relationship with somebody that you are friends with because they believe in something different? That's what the lesson I got from that day, and still to this day, he is still Islamic, and obviously I am still Christian. But why does that matter? At the end of the day, that should not matter. It is our choices to be who we are, and ultimately, we still are boys. We are still the homies, and at least I would consider so. So at the end of the day, it's just something you can't force. It's something that's not worth ruining relationships over and stuff like that either, right? At the end of the day, sure, you might want somebody to join your path, but ultimately that is for them to choose. But looking at the whole dang thing with Collective Shout and looking at everything with these payment processors and everything else, they don't want you to get that choice. They don't want you to be able to choose. They want you to basically sit there, be a good little slave to the credit card company, and essentially just take what they give you. But ultimately, that's not how this should be. So the whole point of this is just whatever they're trying to do, religious or not, however they're going about this, they should not be trying to force their choices, basically their faiths, on people that do not want to be a part of that. Or if they want to be a part of it, they should have that choice to be a part of it and not be forced to do so. But that's basically my whole dang point to it now. So yeah, hopefully you understand where I'm coming from with all this. Again, I hardly ever get religious on this channel because I just choose not to. And at the very same time, hopefully you understand a bit more about Me, and yes, I was also one that was forcing people, but not anymore. I don't do that anymore, and that was just the one time I ever did it, and ever since then I learned better from it, right? It's crazy how life can do things. You do something bad, you learn, or at least you do something that you think is right, but you learn better and you be better for it. Something that these activists and credit card companies really should ought to do themselves and learn themselves. But that's essentially all I guess what I really wanted to say for this one. So hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And that's it, this is Boy J, signing off. Have a blessed day.